Hello.
Hey, 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 how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Very good, very good.
It's great to hear.
I think maybe I said this last week, surely not. Um, Summer has arrived here now. The
Oh,
weather is very pleasant, and I would go so far to say it's kind of hot.
oh, very nice. That's
Yeah,
uh, that's a rare and fortunate thing in your necks of the woods.
yeah, absolutely. And it was really strange because it was like almost like autumn weather or even winter right up until about a week ago. And then it came out very hot and it's been high 20s, low 30s every day now.
Yeah, every time there is this like weird weather or some like global changes, I'm like, did you really screw this up like during my lifetime? Like really? We had like so many years
Yeah.
and now it's happening. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we are going to have a great space today. First of all, our main topic is going to be Beam R&D updates, and we have quite a few things that we need to discuss.
Nice.
Yeah, and we will dedicate, I think, the last portion of the hour to that. But before we start with that, there are just a few things that were happening during the week, and especially today, that they just cannot, I can't skip because it's like, yeah, it's crazy times. And you know how they say first they fight you and then you win?
Yeah.
So the problem is that everyone is focusing on that win part.
Yeah, rather than focusing on the actual fight.
Exactly. So, like, one of the thoughts that kind of came to my mind when I was reading all of these SEC, alphabetically suing, Binance and then Coinbase and then like whatever, I thought about like, this is what adoption looks like. I mean, we all dreamt about this adoption that's like, everyone and their grandmother has a hardware wallet and everybody holds Bitcoin. But
Yeah.
this is what the actual adoption looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I guess it's easy to think like 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago, whatever, that adoption would be very pretty. But like, of course, it's not going to be pretty and fun. It's going to be like a fight.
And my personal like, I really like the fact that first of all, it's not like all just kind of one-sided. There is an actual, polemics and there's an actual fight going on, and the judge didn't accept this request to freeze all the Binance US assets. And
Yeah.
there are politicians in the United States who actually demand a reform inside the SEC, and they claim that Gary Gensler kind of doing overreaching in terms of his regulatory activity recently and all that. So there is an actual fight going on, and yeah, I mean it's really intense.
Yeah, it's intense and very like nuanced and interesting. Like that, the fact that there are like more, not more, but like in the numbers matter, but like more and uh, anyway, there's more like pro crypto people in positions of power, like you've just mentioned. That I find that really interesting, and some of the states in the US are far more friendly to crypto. Some countries are looking more friendly than others, which I guess we saw last like cycle with Malta was going to become the blockchain hub of the world, and then it wasn't.
Exactly.
but but it's very interesting and good to see like actual people in power that are coming out and like even not being pro, but not being like very against and being fair at least.
Yeah, it's also a process of education because I suddenly realized, how I said like that it's strange that Ethereum is not mentioned in all of these weird, kind of statements that mention Cardano and they mention Solana, but they don't mention Ethereum. And then I suddenly
Yeah.
realized they probably don't know that Ethereum is proof of stake now.
Yeah, They're still reading off on the first white paper and trying to get their head around that.
Something like that. They marked, the V
Yeah.
in the proof of work column back in the day. And the thought came up to me when I saw this tweet when they're going to talk to Vitalik about how Ethereum works. And I'm
Yeah.
like, they don't know. It was very funny.
And this,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I've forgotten what I was going to say, but this was like one of the interesting parts about like the whole, is it a security, is it not a security, and how there was a bit of discussion around, can something start off as a security and then become not a security and then switch back to a security, and this kind of stuff, or whether it's like yes or no forever.
Yeah, because when you're trying to apply a law from 1934 to something that was just invented like 10 years ago and it's not just like a new technology. It's basically the first time in human history when you have like this the concept of decentralized money, and then you're trying to just kind of, squeeze it into those existing, boxes and categories. Yeah, you might run into problems. I mean, yeah, not to be too, sarcastic, but come on.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, and this is something that no one's like talking about enough, I don't think, is that like maybe we need specific kind of stuff
No, it's actually
for
it's actually
the
being
current
discussed
time.
that yeah, like specific regulation is needed, and yeah, but once again, it's all happening uh, in the background of actual lawsuits and all that stuff. So yeah,
Okay.
we cannot just ignore that and say yeah, we need regulation. You're kind of two major players in the market are getting sued, and so yeah. So another interesting story that you probably heard about is these blackouts on Reddit that people are boycotting this decision to raise API fees.
Yeah, I did see about the rise in API fees, and the blackout stuff is them like a digital protest kind of thing. Is that right?
Yeah, so uh, I mentioned it last time, so I'm watching this YouTube channel by Louis Rossmann, and he's mostly talking about right to repair and things like that, but he also covers a lot of other cases where customers are getting screwed by companies, and he tries to advocate self-sovereignty and your right to own things that you actually paid for and things like that. So just
Yeah.
today, a few hours ago, he released a video about the response from the Reddit CEO who said, "Oh, it's all bullshit," and basically kind of tried to ignore and demean the protest of the community. And uh, I think it's a very interesting case for Web3, and I'm really bullish on Web3 because I think that there are a lot of important concepts in this approach that are coming to become like very relevant today. And this is a great example because what's happening is that now in the situation where the money is not cheap anymore and you cannot just finance everything through basically raising more and more money, companies are starting to really think about how to become profitable and like make their own kind of income and all that. And one of the problems with these platforms, including Reddit, is that they do not really have a readily available business model that is profitable. So then they're doing all these things like selling blue marks for $8 and raising API fees. And while they're doing that, they alienate a lot of users who uh, like they're not doing it smartly enough, and then they're basically creating a situation where people who created all of the content that makes these platforms even relevant, right? Because on Reddit, uh, it's people who created all this content, that they're moderators who are working for free to moderate those communities. So
Yeah.
when you take away, like it's not just about paying for APIs, because it means that a lot of tools that are currently available on Reddit for moderation and third-party clients will not be able to exist anymore. And it actually impacts the people who use Reddit a lot, and they will have to look for alternatives. And we
Yeah.
did talk about it last time a little bit, but I think it will be a good idea to discuss this topic again, maybe in the next space or in a couple of weeks. How Web3 business models, like what are they and how they can improve the situation, like what can be done. Because what he said in the video, and I completely agree with him, it's not like it doesn't necessarily have to be that a community, say, I don't know, Bitcoin or whatever, like large communities don't necessarily have to be on Reddit. They can be anywhere. People will still find them and people will still participate. So
Yeah.
once, and people do migrate between platforms all the time. So like once there will be a good alternative that will provide a good compensation model. And one of the great things about tokenomics is that you can create this economy that compensates moderators in some way and provides more autonomy and self-sovereignty to people using this platform. People might actually prefer that, right? So that's his point. And I will tweet his video, and I think it's like I recommend watching it because like first of all, I like this guy, and he makes a lot of sense, and all of the points in this video they're very valid, and I think he doesn't say Web3 anywhere, right? But I think what he's saying is basically a good point for proper decentralized, blockchain and tokenomics driven architectures, and I think it's worth exploring.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I think like what you mentioned, really, like tokenomics and how these are very like configurable. I think this is a very cool part of like the Web3 initiative or whatever it's called, and in that like these communities can kind of control and be self-governing in a sense and that kind of thing,
Absolutely,
rather than relying on all this outside stuff.
absolutely.
And the Reddit case is really weird because it's almost like what gives Reddit its kind of value is all of these people that are using it, and by increasing the API fees, it kind of disincentivizes its users, whereas Web3 at least has the chance to do the opposite.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing a decline in these like large centralized platforms, and we saw it. It started a long time ago. It started with Google suddenly not evil anymore and things like that. But there was no real alternative, and I think today with the development of blockchain and Web3, there are actually good alternatives. And it's not going to be just porting, existing architecture or existing concept onto a blockchain and saying, "Oh, we have Web3 now," but rather it will, in my opinion, require more significant changes in how people use things. But it's coming, and I see a lot of new projects and like directions that kind of indicate that it's happening.
Yeah.
So the last kind of or almost last story before the updates that I just have to talk about because it happened really like an hour ago, and it's absolutely crazy. So it's about Tether. Oh my
Yeah.
God! So in the morning, like my morning, I saw this news that USDT depegged on Curve. It was strange, so like I started following the story, but then there was an official statement and I tweeted it. You can look up my tweet, and there is a link to the official document from Tether. And turns out that they had to submit a bunch of documents to the U.S. government during their settlement in 2021. And these
Yeah.
documents included sensitive data, including data about users. And
Okay.
immediately, CoinDesk, requested to get access to those documents using this, what's it called, like kind of public, domain. It's called New York Freedom of Information Law. That's what CoinDesk
Yeah.
used. I'm like looking at the article right now, and they requested to disclose these materials, and then Tether was fighting it, like trying to prohibit or like limit access of CoinDesk to this information. And today they finally gave up and they kind of allowed CoinDesk access to this information.
Okay. Yeah.
And immediately, like very closely after CoinDesk actually got this information, there was an attack in USDT.
Yeah, I saw. I didn't see the stuff about CoinDesk getting this information, but I did see like some. I think it was the block or someone that was talking about a Tether DPEG or.
Yeah. So
But
I mean,
if sorry, continue.
no, there are several interesting points here. First of all, you know how we think that the government is going to use analyses and analyze networks and monitor addresses? No, they don't need to. They will just go to these regulated entities or entities that are in any kind of legal proceedings with them, and they will get this data, right? So the government doesn't even
Yeah,
need to put in the effort of monitoring anything in this specific case. And then once again, like CoinDesk, we know CoinDesk, they will basically do whatever it takes to get something, newsworthy, let's put it mildly. And the fact that they actually say that, like I'm quoting here, we find it suspicious that today's attack at USDT via both DeFi and centralized exchanges occurred on the day that materials were handed over to CoinDesk. This timing raises questions. That's a quote from their official statement.
yeah,
Ah, come on. It's crazy.
yeah. I mean, it's very crypto-esque.
In so many ways. In so many ways.
Yeah.
Uh, Speaking of crypto-esque, you mentioned this story about this crazy Prometheum exchange.
Yeah, like I don't know all of the details, but I saw a very interesting thread yesterday about an exchange called Prometheum, uh, and it's very very strange and very bizarre. And it was like they applied for a license or permission as a special purpose broker dealer for digital assets and they got approved. And like the thread explained it very well, and I'll do a very poor explanation of it. But the main thing I thought was like I've never heard of Prometheum, and I've never seen anyone discussing it. I saw a video of the like CEO who is is on the team with his father and brother, or at least what looks like that. Uh,
Family
and they got their
business.
license, and he was saying that they don't trade Bitcoin and they don't trade Ethereum, and so like in front of Congress or whatever, and it was very strange. Like the guy interviewing him or questioning him was was very close to, but didn't ask like what is it for if not those two, because he was saying like they make up 60% together of the like digital asset trade volume and this kind of stuff. But very very bizarre story.
Yeah, it's a catch-22 SEC style. You can be registered
Yeah,
and regulated as long as you trade nothing.
yeah. And this was one of the, if I remember right, this was one of the complaints that Coinbase was making, that there was no like there was no kind of way to get licensed, or there was no kind of they didn't see how anyone could do it, and that was one of their complaints. And now that Prometheum has got their special purpose broker dealer license or whatever, I guess they can say like, well, there is a way to get it.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
Oh my God. Yeah. So, one kind of last interesting thing I wanted to mention, and actually it's also a good segue into the actual R&D updates and everything that we're doing right now. But
yeah,
so recently, I've been looking up information about Liquidity, which is the stablecoin that Nifrit is based upon, and it was somebody asked me a bunch of questions about Liquidity and Nifrit and like what are the differences and how Liquidity works. So I was looking up this information, and I was also looking up the kind of stability, the relative stability of Liquidity compared to DAI and USDT and all that. And I ran into this article, about top, something or like about stable coins in general and like different types of stable coins, USD based and crypto backed and everything like that. And liquidity wasn't mentioned there, even though Frax, for example, was. And like obviously you have MakerDAO DAI is the leader in this category, and then you have some other projects mentioned. And it's all about the fact that it's actually a problem of projects that are really good, but they have small market caps, so they don't get into the top of their respective category. So, for example, when you are doing it, so all of these media portals and media sites, they do have to provide some value. Like obviously they publish a lot of bullshit, but they do have to provide some value in order for real people to come and visit and watch the ads and everything. So one of the most well-known kind of tricks or things that they are doing is doing these lists like top something in something. And what they're doing is they're not doing any research or they're not trying to really get into understanding of what things mean, but rather what they're doing is going to CoinMarketCap or any other aggregator site or Messari, and they're looking by kind of market cap in a specific category. So top privacy coins, right? Obviously you have Monero, you have Zcash, and then you have something like Verge or Dash, like all things like that. And they don't try to understand what privacy means in this context. So Liquidity has the same kind of small market cap curse as Beam does in this regard. So they don't get mentioned a lot. So this person asked me, like, tell me if they're so good as you claim they are, like, why are they not so popular? And it's exactly the same thing that happens to Beam. So it's very difficult to to break out of this situation because you don't have money to advertise because you have a small market cap. You will not be mentioned organically because you're not in the top 10. And everything goes by market cap these days, so nobody really tries to understand like what's going on under the hood. And in fact, we're like, I think the kind of best manifestation of that was that we're currently talking to this company, and I'm not going to mention any deals because it's too early, and like I don't, it's not a teaser, it's not a clickbait. I'm just saying that it's an interesting dialogue that's happening, and this person actually took a lot of time to research the space, and he talked with several different privacy projects about his ideas and his needs. And when he talked to us, I was very proud. I was very proud for several reasons. First of all, because when you start to explain, like really, like you get the chance to talk to people and explain to them and show them everything that we've built and we've done, it's really amazing.
Yeah.
Both in terms of how many different things you can build on Beam and how it's used. And also, it's very important that like it's all kind of on there is no, I don't know how to say it, like our reputation is very good in this space, which is very nice. You can basically show everything that you've done. You can show all the code. Um, it's very easy to talk about Beam, to promote Beam, and like I was really like when we finished the conversation, I was really proud of what the team uh, has done and has built.
Yeah, and it is like a shame and almost like an embarrassment for the industry as a whole. Like in Beam's case, sure, but in general, like a lot of the coins with high market caps are very almost like purely speculative, or like there's very little development, there's very little use case. And this brings me to something that Max and Flaxel said regarding like the Berlin Web3 Summit. He said that, I can't find it now, but he said that someone said like everything's a meme coin, and like there's some truth to it. I mean, people are very like focused on stuff that may not be the most useful stuff to be focused on, whether it's meme coins or like speculation or this kind of stuff. But it's very often not to do with like the tech and the possibilities and opportunities that come with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been talking about this for a lot of, many times, how to improve the awareness, how to like spread the message more effectively. And I think we're going to talk about this a lot more in the future as well. But for now, let's talk about some things that are happening, on the R&D updates, because after all, this is actually there's a lot of things that kind of accumulated over the time, and I think it's time we got started with that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so first of all, the mobile wallet update to 7.3, which is the latest version of the Beam wallet library, was just released for both Android and iOS. Yeah. Now it's important that kind of there are two parts to this update. So the first part is to update the library, obviously, but I think the more important and also like very highly anticipated part is the availability of the applications themselves, of the dApps. And this is something that's still work in progress. So there are a lot of questions like why is bands not working yet, and like why other things are not working yet. So we are working on updating all of the dApps to be compatible both with the mobile wallets and also with the web wallet that we will talk about in a second. The text is working already, as you saw, and it immediately resulted in 69 assets on Beam Chain being traded very actively.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we are currently updating. So there are several kind of things that need to be changed and updated in applications. So it's not just like the UI that needs to be adapted to different resolutions. It's also some things that are related to how the applications are constructed, because the way that dApps operate inside the wallet is slightly different, inside the desktop wallet specifically, is slightly different from how they operate outside the desktop wallet when they need to connect to kind of external components. And it's especially important for the web wallet as well, but on the mobile, there are also some issues, especially on Android, that we ran into some difficulties there. So we're actively working on that. In the coming days, I think we will kind of see and update the applications one by one until all of them are working properly. So that's on that.
Nice.
Yeah. Now, the web wallet, and there was also a lot of discussion in the community. The web wallet was released to the Chrome store, to the Google Chrome store, and some of the applications are already working. So if you go to dex.beam.mw, it's working. Once again, it's the same process that we update the applications one by one. We didn't PR it, we didn't talk about it or tweet about it because, first of all, the web wallet itself is a little bit buggy yet. So it's not ready for prime time. It's ready to be tested on mainnet. It's working. It's not causing any problems, but there are some UI issues and some quirks that we need to iron out before we can, launch it fully. And the same goes for the dApps. So if you go to bands.beam.mw, I think it will open as well, but when we will try to actually connect it to the wallet, to run into difficulties. So we are fixing those.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So in the meantime, there were several updates that Vladi made to the node, and it's going to be released as the part of the 7.4, which will be the next release of the node and the desktop wallet. And these updates they include three key kind of changes. So first of all, the base library that we use for the basic cryptography, it's called lipsecp 256. And it's not something written by Beam. It's the cryptography library that is used by all the projects that are using this specific elliptic curve, which includes Bitcoin and many others. And what he has done, he basically updated this library inside Beam to the latest version, and it's improving performance of the nodes and the desktop wallets that run built-in nodes. So it's it's like an important update, mostly in terms of performance. Yeah,
Okay.
even though you don't necessarily feel it when you run it on the laptop, but it is important. It's more
Yeah.
optimized, it's more updated, so it's a good improvement to have. The second thing that he added is the support for multiple owner keys. This actually came from the community as a request, and it turns out, as it's usually the case with Vladi, that he accidentally almost implemented it some time ago when he was working on a hardware wallet. So he basically just kind of packed it and enabled it. And what it allows you to do is to have several owner keys specified in the configuration, which means that your node will scan for all of these different, so each owner key belongs to a different seed. So before this update, you could only configure the node to monitor one seed or like what UTXOs from one seed and kind of be an own wallet for one specific seed. Now with this new improvement, you can configure your node to be your node for multiple wallets. So if you, for example, use different seeds on mobile and on desktop, or you have like other configurations that require working with several seeds simultaneously, now it's possible using this new update.
Nice.
Yeah. And the third important update, which is going to be enforced in the next hard fork, but for now it's kind of the preparation to this move. And it is very interesting. So basically what's happening right now when you are sending a transaction, there are two categories. So there's Beam and there are confidential assets. And when you are sending a confidential asset, you specify the type as 1 out of 64 in this specific case. So it means that you don't say I'm sending you Tico or Nifrit. Instead, what you're doing, you're adding a proof which says like I can prove that it's one of these set of 64 assets, but I don't tell you which one, but it's a proof that it's one of those. And it means that the asset type within the transaction with confidential assets is also kind of remains private and is not disclosed. However, when this feature was initially added in the last hard fork, we didn't have a lot of assets back then, and the fact that if you add Beam, or any transaction with Beam, you add this proof, it makes the blockchain bigger. So we had this trade-off that we needed to decide upon back then, whether we want to immediately include this proof with all of the transactions with Beam as well, or just keep them for the confidential assets. And back in the day, since we didn't know what is going to be the actual usage or what we're going to do with confidential assets and how many will there be, we decided back then to leave the Beam out. So the transaction with Beam says it's Beam, and the transaction with confidential assets says that it's one of, which is a more private solution. So now that we see that we do have a lot of assets and we do have active usage of assets in many different cases, including DEX, which creates, as you know, LP token for each pool and many others, we think that the next hard fork will be a good opportunity to enforce this kind of obfuscation or better kind of hiding of the type, including Beam. So it means that Beam will actually participate. Let's say we have, 300 assets on Beam. And then when you specify the window, when you say it's one of 64, Beam will always be included, which means that every transaction with Beam or confidential assets will include this proof. So it will make the blockchain a little bit larger. However, it will also increase the privacy because now not only there will be no difference for external observer between different assets, but also there will be no difference between Beam and any confidential asset.
Okay, nice. So after this, it'll all look the same, whatever asset, whether it's Beam or a confidential asset.
Exactly. So
okay, cool.
instead of today that you can say, yeah, it's Beam or not Beam, basically, but you don't know what. Now, when you're looking at transaction, you will not even know if it's Beam or Tico or whatever. Like you don't even like or Beambot's token, right? You don't know what it's going to be.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So
And
this update actually enables this by default as a wallet behavior, and after the next hard fork, it will also be enforced by the nodes. So the nodes will no longer accept transactions that are not hiding Beam.
okay, nice.
Yeah. So these are the node updates. Moving on.
What
Yeah,
I have a
sure.
question about that. Like, what are the benefits to like being able to not distinguish between Beam or assets and assets themselves?
It's mostly about kind of, mm, additional layer of privacy, I would say.
Yep.
Mostly it benefits assets that are, um, I would say, like rarely used, or if there are not too many transactions. So obviously, at least at the moment, most of the transactions are still in Beam, or they use Beam in some way.
Yeah.
So this is the higher or larger anonymity set. Now, when you have uh, in the current situation, when you see, okay, this Beam, so we can put it aside, and now we can look at all of the non-Beam transactions. And if it's something that's relatively rarely used, you can still try to figure out what type of asset it was. Obviously, you will not know who the sender is, you will not know the value, you will not know anything, but at least you can deduce somehow the asset type, right? But now when we
Yep.
mix it all together with the Beam as a type of transaction, it's part of this kind of opaque proof. It means that it will be much more difficult to even deduce the asset type of the transaction, even in rarest of cases.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so that's the benefit. Okay, so the next one on the list is the Explorer update. Um, The latest version, which still has some issues, is on the DAppNet right now, so you can take a look at it. But we need to fix some UI quirks there, and then we will also roll it out to mainnet, the official Beam Explorer. As of now, there is this Vladi Explorer, which is being circulated. It's just an HTML page that accesses the Explorer node API directly and creates this very informative and very geeky looking UI, very old school, Web 1, HTML, things like that. You will love it. And it really shows all of the information. But now the official Explorer is basically doing a more modern and usable looking version of that, presenting the information about the smart contracts, which is absolutely essential.
Yep.
And just like Beam Assets is doing a great job of presenting all the transactions on the DEX, so this one is going to be less kind of focused on the DEX, but more kind of general about all kinds of contracts, how much value is locked in the contract, using which coins, and the information about the assets and which transactions, not smart contract transactions, obviously they participated, so things like that. And the second very important part of this update is to be able to provide API for like CoinGecko, CoinMarketCap, and all of the aggregator sites, so that they will be able to receive price feeds for assets that are traded on BeamDex.
Okay, cool.
And this will allow us to add assets that are traded on BeamDex to these trackers and aggregator websites.
Yeah, as this was a little bit of a problem with getting, for example, BeamX onto CoinGecko or the likes.
Yes,
Is that right?
that's one of the key requirements is to have a price feed. And since BeamX is not traded on any of the centralized exchanges as of now, so the only place you can get this price feed from is the DEX.
Makes sense.
Okay, so the next thing that is currently in testing, and it actually is interesting because there were some interesting opinions about this today in the community, and I'm talking about the reverse bridges, the bridges that allow to move Beam and lock Beam on the Beam chain and then get a wrapped version of Beam on Ethereum.
Yeah, there was some good discussion about, I saw the naming of the beam on Ethereum.
Yeah, so that's definitely one of the things that we need to decide upon. But I think another interesting point was what are the pros and cons of such a move? And
Yep.
I think it's important that we discuss that, maybe even using create some thread in the forum and discuss this more kind of official way, because there are very valid arguments from kind of several people about this. So the first argument is that it's a little bit misleading because Beam on Ethereum is not private.
Yeah.
And this was one of the arguments that like I really kind of support, because like I thought the same. Like, what's the point, right? What's the point of taking something that's private and then moving it to Ethereum, which is not private, and then like what what's the purpose of that? However, there is an opposite argument, which is also valid, is that listen, yeah, like if you want privacy, obviously use Beam, but we also need awareness and we need liquidity and we need traction and we need adoption and we need all those things. And getting them on Ethereum is much easier because the liquidity is already there and the user base is already there. So in order to kind of increase this, circle of people that know about Beam, it's a good move to kind of create this wrapped Beam on Ethereum and then just use it for trading on pools and all kinds of protocols. Even though, obviously, and it should be very clear to anyone that if you trade Beam on Ethereum, it's exactly as private as any ERC20 token and no more.
Yeah, exactly. And I've always been like a pro having Beam on Ethereum due to like opening it up to the ecosystem there and people being able to onboard or how even speculate via like dexes and this kind of stuff, which I assume many people are doing via centralized exchanges, and obviously you get more. I feel weird saying this. You'd get more privacy on a centralized exchange than you would trading Beam on, for example, Uniswap, like wrapped Beam on Uniswap. But it's, and I think it's an interesting way, and definitely like need some discussion surrounding it as to the pros and cons, and get some input from the community.
Yeah, so what I suggest to do is, first of all, the code is ready, it's being tested, and we're ready to deploy it once the tests are done, and it looks good. So what I suggest is we sleep on it for a weekend, and get back together on Monday on the forum and in the community, and make some official decisions about this. Basically, like if we decide that it's still a good idea, and once again, it's a bridge, so anyone is free to like if it's deployed, anyone is free to kind of move their own Beam in the wrapped form to Ethereum. And also one of the possibilities is to decide that it's a trial. Like, I mean, it's up to us, it's up to the DAO. We can say we're going to try this for a few months and then we will just announce that it's closing or whatever. Like if we see that it's not working, because, one of the discussions, which is very valid, obviously, is that like, wait a second, does it make it easier to buy Beam or does it make it easier to sell Beam? Like, what's going on here? Do we really want more ways to sell Beam? So yeah, I mean, I understand, and I don't know. So we need to talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so two. Okay, so two minor topics that I just want to mention. First is documentation fixes. You probably noticed that some of your docs are not updated on the website, and one of the reasons for that is that when we have migrated from the Gitbook to GitHub and then to kind of the website representation, I think there is something wrong with the synchronization between the Gitbook and GitHub, and something is not working there. So I need to I'm going to disconnect Gitbook and I'm going to focus on GitHub and our website to show all documentation in the kind of most updated form. And the second thing, and it's on me, like I'm working on that. And the second thing that I wanted to mention is the fundraising app that we have been discussing, and we also want to start working on that. So we will probably provide some information and designs and all kinds of things to discuss about that as well. So these are just to get these things out of the way. Now, there are two big things that, or not very big, but two things that I want to discuss in more detail. So the first one is correcting our mistake of allocating too much BeamX to the BeamX pool and not allocating BeamX to the Beam Nefrit pool.
Yeah, and I think the original proposal was like Beam BeamX, Beam Nefrit, and BeamX Nefrit, and instead of each getting a third, it all went to the Beam BeamX pair. Is that right?
I will have to check that, but I think it was Beam BeamX and Beam Nefrit or something like that. Like
Okay.
2/3, like 4% to one pool and 2% to another, and then eventually we made a mistake during the deployment, and all the 6% was allocated to the Beam BeamX pool, and Beam Nefrit got nothing. Now, in order to fix that, we just need to like update the contract and basically reallocate the funds. Obviously, not to the part that was already distributed, but to reallocate the remainder in the way that we have previously decided. So we will just confirm, because the other alternative that we talked about is to allocate more BMAX. And like, I know that we screwed up, like it's our fault, but I just want to make sure. I don't think we need an official on-chain vote on that, because we kind of already voted on-chain and it was just kind of our mistake that we didn't implement it correctly. But I just want to be sure that everybody in the community is aware of what is going to happen. So we will make an official thread out of it in the forum, the Telegram and Twitter, just to make sure that everybody agrees and there are no like major objections to moving the allocation back to its original intended and agreed upon form. So that's the first part. The second thing that I think we need to make a decision about is the governance, the on-chain governance. If you remember, it has, like in the paper that describes how BMX governance works, there are two types of proposals. There are these kind of special proposals that are already implemented, and that's what we have been using to this day. But also there are regular proposals that talk about proposals that are actually, are actually active every voting period. And and one of the things that they talk about is allocation of the DAO funds.
And this is the DAO funds in terms of both like the treasury that's there already and the funds that are coming in via, for example, the DEX and bands and this kind of stuff?
Yes. So first of all, yes, there are quite a few different kind of sources. The bands is one of them. The DEX fees is another that currently use the DAO Vault to accumulate these fees as each and every protocol specifies. So it's about these kind of funds that keep accumulating. And what I suggest to do is, for all of us to review once again the original governance proposal. It was a long time ago, so maybe some things are already forgotten, and we need to kind of refresh them. And then I would like to decide on a kind of timeline to implement that, like get the approval to get it started from the DAO, and then basically make sure we still agree on the things that we talked about 2 years ago. Back in the day, it was not a DAO, it was a proposal how to DAO should do things. But now we have the DAO, so it's great. Like we can make these decisions together, and then we will see whether we need I would suggest, and I think it's a good idea to have an on-chain vote on that, just to make it official, so nobody comes later and says, "Wait a minute, I didn't read that thread, or I didn't know, whatever,"
Yeah.
and then move to implement the second part of the governance. And I think it's a good time to do that, while everybody's suing everybody, and
Yeah.
yeah, we will just continue building for a while, and yeah, and that's the plan. I think I have covered most of the topics. Yeah, I did.
We also, I think we've covered a lot of them. Let me have a look.
I see some nice
We've,
questions here. So if it's okay with you, I
yeah,
will address them.
of course.
So there are kind of several things that are related to what I have been talking about. So about the Nifrit not being available on mobile.
Yeah.
So the thing is that I was actually hoping, or the ideal solution, let's put it like that. The ideal solution would be to implement support for the decentralized app store on both mobile and web and everywhere, and completely moving the store to be decentralized on desktop as well. So that's the ideal solution. However, it's a little bit complicated, especially in case of the web wallet. Like it might be still possible on mobile, but very difficult to implement. I think like on the web, like it's complicated. So the question is that like right now the Defreet is only available on the desktop wallet. And the question is that do we really want to wait, or should we in the meantime just add the front end which we have for Defreet to the current centralized, annoying store that we have. The
Okay.
pros is that Defreet will be available immediately to mobile and web wallet users. The cons are that it's centralized, so IP, you expose your IP, blah blah blah, like all of these things. Like they are important, but I'm just saying, like just like you're using, like today when you're using Nifrit on the desktop wallet, it's completely decentralized. You get the DApp from the IPFS, you don't touch anything on the web, and it communicates directly with the blockchain. So that's kind of a dilemma that we have.
Yeah. I have a question about
Sure.
this? I know maybe this is a weird one. I was under the impression that you could host a front end on IPFS as like a website. Would something like that be possible with Nefri?
Yeah, it is, but you still need you still go through some kind of a CDN, like content distribution network.
Okay.
Like it's not like it's not
Ah,
directly from IPFS. There is like the source is on IPFS, but when you access it from your browser, it's actually cached in this kind of caching
yeah.
service.
So that would solve a little bit of like the centralization problem, but not at
Yeah,
all
a
the
tiny bit. Yeah, it's still not ideal.
Cool. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
So another interesting suggestion is to have a null address or a burn address on Beam.
This would be cool. Yeah.
Definitely. So, like, I already talked about it with Vladdy several times, and it's maybe even going to be. It could be a separate application because I dreamt this name like a black hole, where the
Okay. Yeah.
side, the lights of beam cannot escape, blah blah, and yeah, so we can do it. It could be very very kind of cute, but we also can build it as a part of Asset Minter or any other application. And basically, it's going to be through a smart contract where you have a vault. It's a very simple contract, one of the most basic ones that we have, without any key to extract the funds. You just basically are going to send funds, and it will be visible what was burned in this.
Okay. Yeah.
We can also make it that it will be invisible if you really want to, but I don't know if it's that critic. I mean, we can discuss it. But if you are okay with the fact that it will be visible what you have burned, and you can prove that here I burned some asset of this kind, then it's very simple to implement, and we will definitely do it.
I have a suggestion that I have a suggestion that I just thought of in the last 5 seconds. It could be cool, like, to have this extended, not just to be like a black hole, but a black hole that stuff can escape from. I know for some stuff, usually like meme coins and stuff on Ethereum, but sometimes it's popular for people that launch coins to lock, for example, liquidity for X amount of
Yeah.
time, or lock tokens and have vesting, and this would be kind of a cool extension to the like burning idea as well.
Yeah, so this is actually we talked about it as well in two contexts. So first of all, yes, you can build just something that you lock for a definite period of time. But I think what is going to be maybe even better is to extend the contract that we currently have for liquidity mining.
Yeah.
So that it can be, you can create your own program, like, of lock assets for this period of time and then get yield in another asset of your choosing. So like a generic, yield mining.
That's cool. Like a Master Chef, which I think is one of the most like popular forked contracts on Ethereum.
Yeah, it's a
and
good,
that's all about like
good thinking.
this yield farming stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So there was a question about the hackathon and what's happening with that. Like it's still stuck at my plate, and let me do some additional work, and then I promise to have updates about that next week. Promising things for the space is a great motivator. I discovered.
Yeah.
What else? Yeah, I think we covered most of it. Yeah, that's about it. And amazingly, the time is almost up as well.
Yeah. I mean, like, we've covered a lot, and in the beginning, very interesting stuff, but the updates that have come through like in the last while from Beam have been fantastic. And I think like the mobile wallet, having the DEX and other dApps working and more on the way, is a huge win for Beam, as shown by the increase in volume on 69 and
Oh man,
Tico. And
one of those days, you see, like the 69 market cap is going to be in the top 10 of everything.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, it's been great. We are going to like, there are tons of things that I, didn't mention. There was a very nice event from like that I attended, organized by Beam Africa. And I talked about like kind of Web3 and how Beam is building infrastructure for that as well. And yeah, so we're going to talk about Web3, I think, also next time, because I'm really interested in this subject. And if you happen to find any good resources, articles, or projects that talk about Web3 business models or like revenue models, tokenomics, and things like that, please send them to me. I'm kind of really researching this space. So yeah, like if whatever you find, it's really really interesting, and please share.
Absolutely. And if you did miss the space with Beam Africa and want to check it out, all of the links are on Twitter, but also in the last newsletter, along with a couple of interviews which were very, very good and worth a check out. One was with Mind Your Biz, and another guy whose name, Trillion Capital or something, I think it was. Both very cool interviews, and also the link to the Beam Africa one. So if you're not already signed up to the interview, this is where I'm gonna show you and convince you to sign up and stay up to date.
The Trillion, it was streamed, right? It was streamed on YouTube, so it's like available immediately, right?
It was live streamed on YouTube, which I found very confusing when I was getting into it, but I believe I did it right and shared the correct link. the My New Biz one was done a month or a couple of
Yeah, it
months
was
ago, I
recorded,
think.
I know. But no, the
Yeah,
interesting
but
thing with the Trillion Capital, the interview, uh, there was no time cap. So like we didn't agree upfront of what will be the length of the interview, and
yeah,
it's eventually it was like an hour and 15 minutes, something like that.
yeah. Okay.
And it's really like I'm really grateful that like it was like long enough because whenever I start talking about Beam and just kind of talking about not in detail even but just listing all the things and features and covering all the topics and different kind of things that we have it takes an hour. It can like it's difficult to squeeze
Yeah,
it into less time.
yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it was a very good one. I really enjoyed it. We had enough time to talk about everything, many different topics. So I really recommend taking a look and you know retweeting, rebroadcasting, and spreading the word.
Absolutely.
Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. It's been great as usual. We'll see you next week.
See you next week. As always, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Bye bye.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks. Bye.